Hello and welcome to the Critical Breakdown, the podcast where we start at the bottom of Rotten Tomatoes and work our way to 100% fresh. I'm Max.
And I'm Scott, and today we're talking There Will Be Blood, chosen by the fans, and we're doing it in virtual reality for the first time, also chosen by the fans.
Yeah, so put on your VR headphones
Yep.
and enjoy the show.
We had that secondary poll up on Twitter about what medium people wanted this episode.
Yeah.
It could have been just on Periscope. We could have purchased Vine and put it out there. We could have done it in VR. And
we had quite a few votes for an ASMR episode, but I don't think people are ready for that.
No. So we are doing it in VR though. So enjoy that extra dynamic.
Yeah. Speaking of dynamic.
Yeah.
You watch anything cool this week, Scott?
Yeah. I did. I have. They put season 2 of Riverdale on Netflix, and I've been going in on it. It's very good. It's even crazier than the first season, which was very crazy. So it's very satisfying so far.
So, question: I am a person who doesn't really subscribe to the theory of guilty pleasures, like being actually guilty. Like if you just like things, you like it.
Yeah, I'm not guilty about this at all. Yeah. It's because it's next level amazing.
So is it just like it's trash TV, but it's like amazing trash TV?
Yeah, so like I've been known to watch some trash TV. Like I watch MTV's Real World Road Rules: The Challenge, which is about as trashy as it gets, and I respect that. This is like if somebody wrote something that they were like, we need it to be this trashy, it would be like that. And it's not even like it's not that trashy because it's actually like really well made, and it's got this like strange like neon like gothic aesthetic. It's really weird to try and describe, but it's just like it's so over the top and it's so dramatic, and the things that happen are so ridiculous, and all of the adults are useless. I like in almost every episode, one of these high schoolers brings to the sheriff of the town like new evidence to help him with the case, and he's like, oh, I don't know about this. It's like, here are these pictures from the murder. And then they go and investigate it. And it's really dumb. Yeah. But I really love it. I really love how unapologetically over the top it is. Like, there was kind of a terrorist attack in an episode I just watched. So,
that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds kind of ridiculous, honestly.
It's very ridiculous.
I'm into that. I like that concept that it's just ridiculous.
It's like a soap opera, but they just add a lot of like everything you've ever heard of. They add in. They're like, oh, like murder podcasts are in right now, so let's do a true crime thing. Secret incest is in because of Game of Thrones. Let's get that in there. You know.
Yeah.
And like there's something weirdly familiar about it because it's Archie and Jughead and Betty Cooper and all that. Like even though I didn't even read the Archie comics or anything. I only ever saw them like at the grocery store checkout line, but there's something like weirdly familiar about it, and it doesn't use the source material; it just uses character names.
Yeah, I mean they're I've mentioned this before with other properties, but they're kind of in the pop culture vernacular. Like people as a whole know those characters, even if you've never read a lick of them. Yeah,
like I was reading the other day, like Snoopy, like the Peanuts got like a big portion of the rights to the Peanuts got bought by another company, this is a terrible story that I'm telling, but it got bought for like hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's weird because like they're not putting out new Peanuts stuff, and, but like just people know who Snoopy and Linus and
yeah. I mean, there's
Pigpen.
I think it was, I forget which order it goes, but at one point MetLife had licensed those characters, the Snoopy ones, and they said that like the Peanuts characters saved MetLife in a way, and then MetLife was like keeping the Peanuts characters afloat for a while, and I guess they stopped licensing them recently, but now I mean sometimes these characters just exist how we know them.
Yeah, for sure, mutually beneficial relationship there. But if you have any appetite for just ridiculousness, I recommend trying Riverdale.
I know that they're planning a Sabrina the Teenage Witch show, like a new one. Has Josie and the Pussycats appeared on this show yet?
Oh yeah, yep. Josie and the Pussycats, they're main characters.
Oh, that's cool.
Like your main four is is Archie, Veronica, and Betty and Jughead. But then like you have characters around them, like Josie and the Pussycats are one of the big ones, and I don't know if they're like, again, I didn't read Archie, so I don't know if like Cheryl and all these other characters that are in the show were from the comics or anything like that. I assume they were in different capacities, but oh yeah, they're in there. I don't know, because I remember reading about them starting up with Sabrina the Teenage Witch again too, and I don't know what they're doing with it, but
I mean, I liked the kind of crappy 90s show that was out there, but
it was very loved.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was goofy, but it was a fun show. Like, it knew the golden age of it knew what to do for like a teenage witch type of show that was like not anything at all like something like Buffy. It was just like a goofy sitcom. And I think that they could take it other ways, because there's a comic that came out that I've heard back and forth whether or not, like, sometimes they say it's based off the new comic, and I read the first few issues of it, and it was pretty good. It was darker. It was very much leaning in on the witchcraft side. But it was also really neat. Like, it kind of had like the comic itself had a like late 60s aesthetic to it. Even though it's like modern, and it just looks completely different than a lot of stuff I've seen out there right now. I really enjoyed it though. So I hope they use that kind of 60s witchcraft vibe as their inspiration.
Yeah. If it's involved at all with Riverdale, like creators, or if they're trying to like capitalize on Riverdale's success, that wouldn't surprise me if they kind of went like a darker witchcraft tone to it somehow. Well,
dude, I mean, just look at last week. Witchcraft's kind of back in.
Yeah, dude. Witchcraft's back.
Yeah, because, one of the movies everyone's buzzing about this week is Hereditary.
Yeah, I guess it's true.
So you see that, guys? That was a witchcraft bringer back. Actually, it's not even a bringer back, but it's bring around.
Yeah, and it's a pretty loose one, I'll say.
We're just
also seen Hereditary.
Yeah, I mean, there's witchcraft in that movie.
Yeah, in a way.
Just spoilers, guys. There's witchcraft in that movie.
We both saw it.
Yeah.
Some of us more willingly than others.
Yeah. So this past week, that movie came out, had a lot of buzz around it. If you haven't seen it, just skip ahead a couple minutes. We're just going to do some light reviews. Just kind of about our reactions to it. Not really talking too much story, but Scott was very scared, I believe.
That's correct, Max.
And I recognized that parts of it were scary. I wasn't really enamored with the movie. I was kind of like in love with like some of the filmmaking and storytelling aspects of it, but the plot lost me at one point and I could not get back into it. So I think people should still see it and talk about it. And if you like it, you like it. It's great. It has like a 94% Rotten Tomatoes as of today. So obviously it's working for a lot of people, but I think it's it's kind of in a way similar to The Witch, which we watched last week.
For sure.
And the fact that there's a slow burn. Once everything kicks in, it kicks in. It's not a constant jump scare movie like something, I don't know, like The Purge would be. But it's more of a get you there. Then when it all kicks in, yeah, I can recognize that it's jumpy and scary then. But no, I mean, it's interesting. It's definitely stylistically a lot different than what gets popular these days.
For sure. I mean, I would say it's very, very similar to The Witch, in the like tenseness that it builds up and the way it pays off towards the end and everything. I mean, it's a scary movie. It's very well made. I recognize that. I still didn't like it at all, but I never was. Like, the same as The Witch. Like, I'm never gonna love a movie like that. But what's funny is, like, we saw it with a big group of friends. There was 5 of us. And basically none of the other 4 of you guys liked the movie that much.
I think Jody was pretty even on it. I think she recognized a lot of stuff she liked, but it didn't fully work for her. I think she loved the end though, like the scary stuff.
Yeah. But I was just so what's interesting about it is, like, I fully recognize that it's a good movie and I just don't like it. So I sort of liked it the best, even though, like, I'm just saying I didn't like it. I didn't like it.
No, I get what you're saying there. That is kind of funny, actually, that it's something you normally wouldn't even want to sit through, and you kind of came out.
Never sit through it again.
Yeah, you came out the most positive overall. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
the best part of the movie though was when the guy farted like 2 rows in front of us.
Yeah. Some dude was so scared that he just like let one slip, and
it made me feel better about myself because I didn't do that.
Because I believe
at least not out loud.
Yeah. I mean, it was like during a completely quiet part too. So
yeah. The movie has these like these like scenes that are very tense, and then like sometimes very long spells of dryness might not be the right word, but just like where the scares aren't like amplified like that. And during one of those, this guy just kind of ripped like a good 2-second fart.
Yeah.
And then we all tried to stop laughing. Yeah,
it was that. Surprisingly, that would have not even taken me out of the movie, was it not for the thing that bothered me. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how a lot of other people we know feel about it. So if you guys want, to discuss it on the air, just write us an email.
Write us an episode.
Write us a tweet.
These are scripted, by the way.
Yeah. No, send us a tweet, email, anything. Contact us. Text us if you have our personal numbers. Anything.
Don't text me.
Yeah, don't text Scott.
I don't like about anything. Just don't text me.
Yeah.
Because then it puts the onus on me to reply, and I don't want to reply. So even if we're talking about Survivor, just keep it to our email or our Facebook.
Just text me.
Don't text me.
Just text me.
Yeah. And if somebody texts you, Max, and says, "Tell Scott this," don't tell me.
All right. You guys heard it here first. Scott's going full hermit on us. So.
No, there's plenty of mediums where I'll talk with everyone. Just don't text me.
All right. Confirmed.
I had another thought about something a second ago before I had to clarify that I don't want to receive.
Was it about Hereditary or just in general?
It probably was, but it's gone.
Okay.
It's too late, Max.
I did watch the first couple episodes of season 5 of Arrested Development.
Yeah, I already finished it.
Did you like it overall?
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, it's not as funny as the first 2 seasons, but I'm also one of the people who enjoyed season 4, so like in its original form.
Yeah.
And I watched a couple more episodes of the redo and did not like the redo of season 4 as much as the original way it was made.
That's interesting. That puts you kind of in a minority there.
I know I'm in the minority, but
I respect that.
liked it.
Yeah.
I don't like all the narration and
it is
and
heavier
like
on narration. Season 4 is for sure.
I mean, heavier is almost an understatement. It's like there's like probably 5 minutes of narration in every episode of the season 4
I guess
recut.
For me, I forgot so much of season 4 that I don't remember even how it worked in its like original form.
Yeah.
But I didn't really mind the narration too much. But that's just because I think I kind of really ended up enjoying just hearing Ron Howard talk the whole time.
Yeah. That's why I know you've been looking forward to the director's cut of Solo.
Dude, I honestly would probably love that movie a lot more if he just did his narration the whole time. They actually did a little A New Hope version with Ron Howard narration that I suggest everyone go watch on YouTube. It's really funny.
Huh. Anyways, though, I liked season 5 well enough. I mean, I wasn't wild about it, but it's funny.
Okay. I
didn't know they were splitting the season up because it's only 8 episodes or whatever, right? Maybe 8 or 9. I don't remember.
And I don't really agree with that. I don't think they should have. But I haven't finished this part, so maybe I'll agree with it more. But it feels like I read they were just doing that for Emmy.
Yeah, because the Emmy, like, to be considered for the upcoming Emmys, the cutoff was like May 31st, and these came out like May 29th or something.
Yeah.
Which maybe is true. I don't know, but because Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt came out like the next day or something, like its last season, and it's weird that they would put 2 comedies so close together.
Yeah.
Other than for Emmy consideration, but anyways, yeah.
No, but the first couple of episodes have been funny. The only thing that's throwing me off is like in season 4, it threw me off how much Michael Cera has grown up because there was like a vivid aging to him. And so he looks kind of the same from season 4 to season 5. But this time it is Will Arnett has kind of hit a new phase of aging. And
he looks very old.
Yeah. He kind of has the bloated, older, middle-aged man look now. And I'm sorry that sounds mean, but...
No, it's 100% true.
Yeah, and it just kind of... Season 4, he didn't look like that. So it was very confusing. Like, he looked a little bit more tan, maybe. That was it. And it kind of could work for Job. I just wish they would kind of, like, make a joke about it. But at the same time, that's probably not cool to an actor to do that. So, And I think
they're already doing enough weird stuff with Job's character.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, I don't know. I kind of hope they just wind it down with this season, even where I'm starting. I hope they just like get to a good end and leave it.
Yeah.
I love the characters and I love the original run of the show so much that I would rather it just takes a bow at its height and we continue to love these actors and other stuff versus,
Yeah, man, I still love Will Arnett and other stuff. Like, BoJack Horseman's a really cool show, and he has had a weird run here where he was sort of like one of the top comedians for a while there, and then his shows, it didn't flop, I guess, because I had a few seasons, but I don't remember the name of it. He had that sitcom on NBC.
like Flaked or something?
Well, Flaked was his Netflix show that also failed. But he had a sitcom on NBC for a few seasons as well. But I don't know. His career is going to hit a not a stop, but
he did Show Dogs, didn't he?
Yeah, which also isn't a good sign.
Yeah, it's a bad sign.
Anybody would be bloated after a run on Show Dogs.
But it's funny because he did. He's like a Batman too, right?
Yep.
So it's just strange how he can still balance these terrible and great roles at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. But I like Will Arnett. I hope he, I hope he's doing all right. That's all I'll say.
Sure. No. But season 5 was well enough. I don't mind if they keep making these seasons because, like, obviously, no, they're not as good as the first few. But there's not any other comedy out there that's really like Arrested Development. So
yeah, I'll give you that.
Even like a B version, I'm okay with.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing is I still get excited to watch it. I still laugh and I still love the inside jokes and it still works for me. I would hate for it to go on until it doesn't work for me. And I know some people already feel that way with the Netflix stuff.
Season 4, I mean, a lot of people just didn't.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. But, yeah. I appreciate their humor still. So.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the main show here.
Max, what's the plot synopsis for There Will Be Blood?
The story of a turn-of-the-century oil man as he navigates family, religion, hatred, and madness during the early days of the oil business.
It's Paul Thomas Anderson. It's Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, DDL.
Also known as PTA DDL, you know.
Pataddle.
Pataddle, yep. Pataddle had wanted to work together mutually. PTA wrote this movie, the whole movie, not even just the part, with Daniel Day-Lewis in mind. And Daniel Day-Lewis is quoted as saying he liked Punch Drunk Love enough that he really wanted to also work with Paul Thomas Anderson. So, glad they worked it out.
Yeah. And, Paul Thomas Anderson by this point had already established a career of being like an artistic avant-garde director. And I believe this is the first film he made since kind of breaking out that didn't have Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, it was his first movie, period, that didn't have Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting because it very much feels like he could fit in this movie somewhere. But, I think it didn't necessarily need like a Philip Seymour Hoffman. But Daniel Day-Lewis, I mean, he really, like I was saying earlier, everyone loves him. So it's not a hot take to say he's, an amazing actor at all. But, I mean, he really brings it in this movie. For sure. I mean, he brings it to every role. Yeah. Undoubtedly. But, I really enjoyed him as Bill the Butcher in Gangs of New York. And he has a lot of iconic lines in that. But it's almost like every line he mutters in this movie could be an iconic line. Yeah. And part of that is just, I mean, the movie is so much so a vehicle for him. Yeah. There's no Philip Seymour Hoffman, like you mentioned, but there's honestly not another star in the movie. Like, Paul Dano is the next biggest actor. And Paul Dano is amazing. I really like him, and he's great here, but he doesn't hold a candle, especially in this young part of his career, to Daniel Day-Lewis. Daniel Day-Lewis is really given the opportunity to be the spotlight. And he's in every scene except for, 2. There's one scene back at Paul Dano's family's home that he's not in, and then there's a wedding that he's not in, and that's it. Yeah. And even other starring roles for anybody, it's rare that somebody is that heavily featured, but when you got DDL on set, you just use them. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely 100% true. You'd be wasting your money if not.
for sure.
But so,
and they must have liked working together because last year, Phantom Thread, another Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and Daniel Day-Lewis, he did that, and then he said, "You know what? I quit. I'm done acting. You fools.
You fools." Yeah, I mean, what can you accomplish repeatedly? I guess being this good. I don't know. Sure. He might come back. We were discussing whether or not we think he's actually leaving the business or not. But sometimes
he's always been picky with his roles. Yeah. So.
And it'll be interesting to see if maybe he retires from acting and switches to directing. But I've never heard if he's even interested in that. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
Is it possible to method direct?
I don't think so. That'd be weird. But I mean, sometimes actors do make the transition and they do pretty well with it if they know what they're doing, basically. So
yeah, Paul Dano's directorial debut is coming out this year. Bradley Cooper's. If they can give Bradley Cooper a movie, Daniel Day-Lewis can make some calls. He can make a movie.
Yeah, and I mean, there's actors like Ben Affleck who have transitioned into directing as well, and I know for him, he just kind of would sit by a director and take in notes of what they were doing and like discuss things with them. I heard an interesting interview with Matt Damon where he talked about he kind of wished he had done like Ben and just like absorbed more of that side, but he never did. Yeah. Yes, I mean, like we said, sometimes they do. So it'll be interesting to see if Daniel Day-Lewis just like vanishes. If he waits like 10 years and it's like, you know what, I'm going to do another movie. Maybe he'll do just another movie in a year. I don't know. But I mean, thankfully there's enough films where you could watch his work still and have years of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's pretty intense in this movie, dude.
Yeah, he won the Oscar,
the old Oscar.
Old Oscar. He's very intense in this movie, though.
And this movie, as you said, was directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. It's also written by Paul Thomas Anderson, and you mentioned that too, but based on Oil by Upton Sinclair, which it's not like adaptation of it, but it's inspired by it.
Yeah, I mean, it is an adapted screenplay, but yeah.
Like from what I was looking online, it seems like he changed most of the characters, but kept the themes the same, but very much used it as the inspiration, like for the story, so that he still it's credited to it and it is adapted from it, but it's not like an adaptation like Watchmen's an adaptation,
Oh yeah, no, for sure. No, I mean it's very well written too. A lot of good monologues. The movie's just kind of monologue to monologue,
Yeah.
And I mean, it had eight Oscar nominations that year. No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood both were like the dominant movies. And No Country for Old Men came out on top on the biggest awards, but There Will Be Blood did win a couple. And they're both great movies. I think we're watching No Country for Old Men as well, if my memory serves correctly, on the podcast here.
That sounds right. I feel like we are.
It feels like the kind of movie that I would pick.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm glad the fans picked this one, because then when we talk about No Country, we can do a little compare and contrast.
So what's interesting with that, first of all, is our second runner-up from the things we could have watched was Raising Arizona.
Another
Coen brothers movie. So we were very close to dipping in the well there. I still would love to. Yeah, I still would love to watch that one and discuss it. But obviously, we could just watch it one day on our own. But sans the show. But no, it's a good movie. So I'm glad that one got close. But I think we made our fans made the right choice here. In vouching for this one. But what's also interesting is There Will Be Blood filmed in the same part of Texas at the same time as No Country for Old Men, and one of the pyrotechnic experiments for the exploding derrick actually interrupted the filming for No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, which is kind of funny to think about. You got to think they were both in Texas, so they're probably like, oh yeah, we don't have to worry about Hollywood, like all this crazy stuff happening. We'll just go out here, make the movie one on our time, and then There Will Be Blood just lights up the Texas sky with billowing smoke, and they're like, okay, well, let's regroup tomorrow.
Let's do a redo on this shot. So it is, I mean, those were the dominating films from that year for sure, and I know a ton of people who, when they name their favorite films, sometimes both or at least one of these are in their top fives usually. Like just not everybody, but a lot of people I know will have one of these two in there. So it's a good year for cinema, man.
For sure. It's always nice to have a couple big uns like this. This had that classic pre-Oscar race. It came out limited the day after Christmas, and then didn't get a wide release till January 25th, 2008. It became one of Paul Thomas Anderson's highest grossing films of all time. It had a domestic run of $40 million, and then it's worldwide with something like $70 million on a $25 million production budget. So, and I bet you it's done pretty good on the old DVD, maybe the old Blu-ray.
For sure.
I don't think it's in the Criterion collection, but don't rule it out. They just put Tree of Life on Criterion collection, so they'll put anything.
Yeah. So you'll definitely skip that one. So yeah, this movie, I mean, man, it has amazing music and visuals, and it's interesting because, and I was discussing it with you right when we finished it. The film itself, like the pacing is pretty slow.
Oh yeah.
But you're gripped the entire time by old DDL there. His performance is so strong that like you're compelled to see what still happens. I was kind of just thinking about it myself, and oil moves very slow. It's
there it is.
It's
viscous.
Yeah, it's viscous, exactly. And it kind of has a slow movement to it. But then with the derricks, it's obviously, these rigs are dangerous and they can explode, and then oil goes everywhere. And it's weird how that kind of thematically fits with this movie too, that this guy's like a ticking time bomb in a sense. But his machinations take a while to like kick in, and he himself in the film says, he's very vengeful and remembers things, and the movie plays that out. And it's just super interesting, man. There's a lot of aspects of this film that are just kind of, it's like a film geek dream where you could just go over so many parts of it and just find little things.
For sure. I mean, it is at its core just like a character study and about their interpersonal relationships, and that's punctuated by some intense moments, some of like big action, almost like in the first act sort of ends with this big oil derrick that they built just like blowing over and exploding, and that's a very thrilling scene. And then there's other scenes like where he has the standoff with his not brother and then kills him. Yeah. And then the ending scene at his mansion bowling alley.
God.
Like those aren't action scenes per se, but they're the like what everything builds up to these moments. And then like there'll be another 30 or 40 minutes of like still important and still amazing character scenes that like kind of get you to that next part, and then it swells again,
Yeah.
So it's really good though. It's not like it's not the kind of blockbuster where it's all about the set piece, like getting to that next set piece and stuff.
Yeah, it's all based on the character there, and therefore the performance. But
yeah, and everything revolves around Daniel Plainview, DDL's character.
Yeah, who
he starts off as like a ambitious. Like I think he was just like mining for silver at first, and then he has like a small well where him and like three guys are just trying to get oil, and then he has he's slowly growing, and then there's a couple times in the movie where there's like a pretty big passage of time, like they'll go 12 years in the future, and he'll say, oh yeah, I have 3 wells that are doing great, getting me $5,000 a day or something like that a week, and then they go even further in the future, and he's got even more success, but it's about kind of his descent. He makes this big speech towards the start of the movie, I guess, either after buying a bunch of people's land or like pitching to buy a bunch of people's land to prospect for oil, where he talks about like, oh, I'm a family operation. This is my son, HW, and all this. And then by the end, it's like he's literally abandoning his son on a train and then like not showing up at his wedding and calling him his enemy. And so it's like, It's about that character's descent for sure.
Yeah, it is, man. It's so interesting because he starts out this, like you said, this dirty salt of the earth like worker. But he
always has that like cutting edge to him.
Yeah, and he definitely never loses his edge for sure. But what happens is he, like you said, I mean, he kind of works his way through this capitalist system, turn of the century, and ends up right towards I think they took it to 1927, which I think is before the crash or right around the crash, maybe.
Yeah.
But basically it ties into that concept as well. But, you know, at the end of it, he's this like greasy, sweaty alcoholic who we watch him, you know, just bash someone's skull in with a bowling pin. And it's just interesting to see, you know, in the beginning, he was concerned enough about other human life where even if he knew keeping this child was like a good thing to do for the child because he could provide shelter for it, it also was a good thing for him because, he could, you know, manipulate people better. And for sure, I think he recognized both. And I think just over time, he tilted more towards the worst side of him, you know? I mean, it's obvious that he does, but it's just interesting to see it, how he begins. He still has the cutting edge. I mean, he's still, you know, this go-getter, ambitious dude, but he is caring for this child. And obviously up until the accident that HW gets into, they have a decent relationship, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It seems like a very caring, and not a partnership per se, because HW is like a 12-year-old, but
he calls him his partner. He never belittles him. Like, he's very kind to him. Then the accident.
He teaches him. It's very father-son, even though it's not technically father-son.
Yeah, and then the accident, he kind of switches to like resenting him for getting injured because he showed like this sign of weakness that he can't be his equal, basically. It's super interesting, man. Like so much of this film I'm glad I finally, because I thought I'd watched it before and just didn't remember it, and now I'm like, I'll probably never forget this movie. But
I had seen it before, but I had watched it honestly in a group of like probably 17 people were like at my apartment in Atlanta when we watched it, and maybe 3 of them were paying attention, so that's not the environment to watch this movie.
This is the kind of film you turn the lights off and just shut the hell up and watch it.
That's right.
So,
but I think the other interesting thing, especially with Daniel Plainview's character, is the duality of Eli Sunday, which is one of Paul Dano's characters, but Eli plays this like pretty passionate preacher at the church, but he is just as manipulative and greedy is maybe not the right word, but greedy.
I would say he's greedy. It's a different type of greedy because he's using the social contract of a church to be greedy, but we see him go from just wanting his church for like $5,000 or whatever, which is a bunch of money back then for sure, to getting a little shack of a church, to getting like a big chapel of a church, to like lording over Daniel Plainview that he has the power due to the Bandy tract or whatever. And then at the very end, we see that, it all blew up in his face. So it's interesting to see, like he had the same greed, but he used this like benevolent cover for it. And like you said, the duality there versus Plainview, where he very obviously was greedy and did not use benevolence for it.
Well, you could argue that with HW, he was, to a lesser degree, but he was doing something similar where he was using his son as like, oh, I'm a family operation. I do this and this. And it's sort of like using the church angle to make money or make deals happen and stuff like that. So they're definitely still similar in that regard a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
Like when at the end of the movie, when Eli comes back to him and the Bandy tract was like, there was this land that Plainview didn't buy, but he had to run a pipeline through it, so he had to lease it. And then when the owner of that land died, he donated his land to the church. So then Eli was trying to basically like extort money out of Daniel Plainview.
Yeah.
Be like, if I sell this tract or if I don't give you the right, then you lose your pipeline in this. And it all blows up in his face because he doesn't have that same strength that Plainview has.
The dangling carrot he was specifically trying to use was that it's untapped land that's never been used before. Because they've only done pipelines on top of it. No one's ever drilled. So there's tons of oil underneath there still while everything else has been tapped. And that's when Plainview delivers the famous quote, I drink your milkshake, that whole thing.
With a really long straw.
Yeah, that everyone always quotes anywhere. So it's
it's a pretty ridiculous quote.
Oh, yeah. But here's the funny thing. And you probably saw this as well. It's a real quote that somebody had recorded from I think a senator, somebody in Congress who was talking about I think it was congressional bribes or something, and why they're not wrong.
They were talking about the oil industry.
Yeah. So
I couldn't find the actual quote.
It's like partially it's taken from transcripts basically from the 1920s. I love that this kind of film does use that like historicity to it. There's some accuracy in these claims, but it's a great scene because you get to see Paul Dano which, you know, we've talked about how he's good in this, but you get to see him go from like
He's
confident
great.
to just like breaking down completely once he realizes it. And it's right after Plainview has demanded that he renounce God and call himself a fraud. And it's like painful to watch that scene, but also like delightful at the same time, because since Plainview is the main character, he's who we've like identified with the whole time, even though we recognize he's terrible. So to see him win, it feels like good, but you're seeing him like destroy a man emotionally. And it's just, man, it's weird, but I loved it. I can't lie.
Yeah, I mean, they were battling the whole time, too. Like, at the start, it seems very innocent. Eli's like, I'm going to bless the well when you open it. And Daniel's like, that sounds great. And then Daniel snubs him.
Yeah.
There was like, Eli wanted to be called like a son of these hills or something like that. The proud son of the little Boston Hills. And then Daniel calls his sister that instead, like the proud daughter of these hills, and snubs the prayer. And then someone dies, and Daniel goes to him and he's like, hey, he's a religious man. If you say a few words, you can do this. And Eli, rather than be like a true religious man, he just uses it to throw it back in his face. He's like, well, you should have let me bless the well. And then they have this constant back and forth where Eli comes up and he wants like payment after another accident happens. And so Daniel literally slaps him around and like almost drowns him in oil. But then the next interaction they have, Daniel's forced to become baptized by him. So Eli literally slaps him around again in front of the whole church. It's amazing, like the duality of it. And then you have this final sequence where Eli first tries to leverage this position of power, and then Daniel's like, no. I drink your milkshake, friend.
Yeah, so basically,
and then he kills him with a bowling pin.
Dude, that scene was crazy, because I thought Eli was just gonna run away and escape, and he like yells something at him. That's what you're expecting, because it's just like, okay, but then he bashes his head in with a bowling pin, and then tells his butler like, I'm done.
And then the movie ends.
Yeah, then the movie ends. So it's just like, okay, yeah, that's crazy. But oh man, I mean, when he's explaining the whole side tapping thing, he kind of alludes to the fact that he's already run pipes into that land and just drained it anyway.
Well, he was just like, if I have a well here, I've gotten that oil. That's how it works. It's all a big oil thing, and I'm drinking it from over here.
It's great, man. The scene right before that, we see, like you said, his son got married, and then there's this big time jump within that as they're showing it, and then his son shows up and tells him, hey, I want to start my own business, and he's like, then we're going to be competitors, and he's like, you're not my son. He like denounces him right there, and it's tough to watch, man.
It's awful.
What's interesting with it, though, is since his son's deaf, I don't know if he fully reads lips. I don't think he does, because he has the translator there. But like a lot of the stuff that Plainview's saying, you know his son's not actually hearing as he's screaming things out, like when he's looking away. But it just shows how much hatred exists in Plainview. It's an interesting take, because like I said, the audience can recognize this kid can't hear it. He's turned around and walking away, but you know, it's still pretty rough to watch.
For sure.
Oh, man, it's a good movie.
Like the moment HW tells him that he's going to start his own oil company and stuff, he's like, well, that makes you my enemy.
Yeah.
And then his son's like, no, we're not enemies. We're going to be in different areas.
Yeah.
Like obviously you're still my dad. I love you and all this. He's like, nope, you're my enemy and you were never my son.
Yeah, it's so nuts.
So, it is.
I just want to mention real quick, well, not real quick, we talk about it, but the cinematographer is Robert Elswit. This movie is like literally beautiful.
Won the Oscar for best cinematography,
and deservedly so. I'm sure probably No Country for Old Men was probably also nominated. I'm not really sure, but that's also a beautiful movie. So once again, great year. But Elswit has also done Nightcrawler. He did the show that I know you like, The Night Of. He did The Town. He's done both Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol, and Rogue Nation. He's worked with Paul Thomas Anderson a ton. He did Magnolia and Boogie Nights as well. And he even did an older film from the 90s, the Pallbearer, which is actually Matt Reeves' first film, which is like, I think it's a dark comedy rom-com starring David Schwimmer and Gwyneth Paltrow. But I remember people saying like it was a well-written, like kind of not great film, if that makes any sense. But
well shot.
Yeah. Well shot. It did have a very distinctive look to it. So like for a rom-com at the time, I mean, it's like an indie rom-com really, but no, it's just funny to see like Matt Reeves's origins here, but to see that he was still working with some good talent.
Yeah.
So no, I love the look of this film, man. There's so many shots where it's just like a burning derrick on the skyline, stuff like that.
Oh my god, yeah.
Just like so many smoky shots of stuff.
Yeah, and like fires will bill out, and so the sky gets like lit up.
Yeah.
And, no, I mean the movie shot really. What was the aspect ratio? It wasn't like a standard.
Let me pull it up real quick.
Aspect ratio, I don't think.
It was anamorphic, 2.39, I believe, is what that one is, or it's cinematic.
Okay. Is that like a standard aspect ratio?
Usually these kind of big epics go with that.
Yeah, they use it for like big landscape shots and stuff like this. The movie does have some really beautiful sequences where they're just like marching through and like what do they call it when you're surveying? They're like surveying the grounds and stuff. They're marching through all these cool different locales.
Yeah. I mean, and it's the landscape is perfect for it. You know, it's one of those Texas like desert oil scene is just like ripe for giant wide shots. It's you'd be dumb to film it any other way, basically.
Yeah, we weren't 100% sure where it was filmed while we were watching it. It could have been like California, but Texas makes sense too.
Yeah.
Because it's set in California.
Yeah. And it's, man, yeah, those shots, like there's so many of them where it's even just simple shots, because we talked about recently, good cinematography sometimes goes unnoticed. Like you're not supposed to notice every single cool shot or cool scene. It's supposed to just get you in the mood and get it going. And this movie does both. It has so many scenes where it just feels like you're, in the prospecting era just because of how it's filmed. And when the movie opens, a lot of the shots are tighter for the first like act. When it's them in their little, what would you call it? The well they dug themselves. Like he dug himself in the beginning. Like all those shots are almost claustrophobic for the first 5 minutes. And then, it kind of widens out as the movie goes, and then by the time he has like multiple derricks in Little Boston or whatever, it's like
super wide.
Yeah, it's wide open, and then it's claustrophobic again towards the end when they're in his house. It's still big shots, but it's like since it's indoors the whole time.
They use the camera work that like it like scales with the movie.
Yeah. So it's cool, man. It's really neat how it kind of brings you in and brings you out again. Almost like Bookends, but definitely way different, because instead of him, risking his life to get this one thing, he's like taking a life inside of this like giant mansion he owns. So
another thing that's interesting, just going back to like his unraveling, Kevin J. O'Connor, an alum from The Mummy, he plays who you think is Daniel Plainview's brother, who just kind of shows up in the middle of the film. He has like letters from their father or something like that can prove it. It turns out that he's not his brother, that he knew Daniel Plainview's actual brother, and then his brother died of tuberculosis, and he took his letters and stuff and then came and found him. But like that with him, Daniel Plainview was super open with him, and he was like, I need a person like this with me, like he even says that. And it's especially after HW goes deaf, and then he shortly after the brother comes into the picture, he sends HW away to like, I don't know, a boarding school or something where like he just doesn't have to deal. But then, so he really trusted this guy, and then it turned out, one, it wasn't his brother, and two, like he was just kind of a leech, and then he kills him. Like he takes care of him, but it's like, that's why he can't be that way with his adult son, HW, because every time he's tried to have a relationship like that, it's failed.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
And to that scene where he kills the brother imposter, like he does it, and most movies you'd expect there to be like a huge long monologue, and there's just like a couple lines of dialogue. And so you're kind of waiting for this like big grandiose killing, and he just does it, and you're not sure if it happened until like a second later when they show the guy's like head roll over and his tongue like roll out of his mouth. So I like how that was, because it was just like, okay, did he do? Oh shit, he did do it. Like,
we weren't sure. We thought it might have been like a warning shot, but no, it was a legit one. Yeah, like all the brother really said was like, or all the guy said was like, I'm not your brother. Just, you don't have to kill me. Just let me go. And then he shot him, and it's like, yep, there you go.
He's just like, fuck you, dude.
Done.
Oh man, it's
it's a really good movie.
Yeah,
it's a natural. It was a good pick because I mean it's a period piece too. Like you don't really. It's not. It's important, but it's not like critical knowing all the details of the time. But a lot of good costumes and sets and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know,
it definitely has the auteur aspect to it. Like you could tell this is a Paul Thomas Anderson film, but at the same time, it's like it very much fits into this time period and feels authentic.
Yeah.
Which I love. I mean, I like when movies can both feel like a specific director's work as well as like, you know, have that historical accuracy to it. It's good, man. It's really good.
Yeah. I mean, it succeeds on all levels. And like, even though it's not an action packed movie by any means, it is a thrilling movie throughout.
Yeah.
Which is satisfying.
I looked up just in my research. I was doing some review research on it just to see what people thought at the time. And Roger Ebert was still alive when this came out, obviously. So in his review, he had said that it's the kind of film that can easily be called great, but that, you know, he's unsure fully of its greatness. He gave it 3.5 out of 4 stars. So, I mean, he did like it, but his concerns with it were more based around the fact that, like, women are basically non-existent in the film, that it's just very much like...
It's very true.
It's not perfect. It's an imperfect film because it has unbending characters and doesn't really reflect ordinary society. Its ending is really, really bleak when you really think about it. So he says the film itself might be exceeding its grasp, which he also says isn't dishonorable. Like, it's fine that it does that. So I guess he's just kind of making comments on like the moral aspects of the film, kind of leaving you like feeling bad, but that he still really enjoyed it. And I get that because, like, I think if I had not watched Hereditary this week, that ending would have been a lot darker to me.
Yeah, you already had like an even darker ending though, so I was like, okay.
I already watched like the most amoral ending of a film I've seen in a long time, including The Witch. So
you watched The Movie Blood and you're like, this is actually kind of sweet.
Yeah, it's like it's a little upbeat, but I liked it.
It's weirdly romantic, him and Paul Dano.
But yeah, so I enjoyed his review. It was good. I recommend people read it because it's a good look at it from the time of release. But I found another review I wanted to read to you.
Yeah.
So I'll read a couple. I'll read the summary of it, and then I'll read like a direct quote from it. So I pulled the summary from Rotten Tomatoes of this review, and it said, Daniel Day-Lewis does an oil maniac in this emotionally drenched, gut-slicing and grueling bipolar gore, and what is surely the most grotesque screen image ever of a warped male maternal instinct. So that's just the summary review. The quote I want to read here is, a huge problem here is that Anderson drops Sinclair's political fury halfway through to detour into capitalist versus evangelical crude slasher carnage, commerce and religion, not to mention blood and oil, just don't mix here.
I mean, they don't... I don't know. I didn't feel like this was... this went easy on like capitalism.
Yeah, I disagree with this.
Anything like that, you know?
That was just the review from our friend Perry Miller.
Are you serious? Was that Perry Miller?
Yeah, that was Perry Miller. So
my God.
I had to bring it up because she literally hates everything.
Except Master of Disguise.
Yeah, that's the only film that I've found that
ever reviewed positive.
Yeah, and usually she leans on hating the male aspects of film as well as the capitalist aspects of film. So this was really like a triggering event for her. Like, no joke. I mean, she probably did hate this movie, and I get that for her, having read some of her other reviews. But I was like, dude, for the person to say that Dana Carvey's, what was it, sprinkled in pixie dust.
I believe it was dipped in pixie dust.
And then in this to be like, you know, this is a terrible movie. I loved that. I was like, I have to read this.
That's funny. Or a Prairie Miller call. I got to not see that coming. I mean, I can get not liking the movie. There are things that... Yeah. Like, I mean, it's not a positive movie at all and stuff like that. But if you watch this movie and you're like, man, it really sucks because the capitalist won in the end. It's like you didn't get it then.
Yeah.
Because the capitalist did not win. Like, sure, he kills someone at the end, but I wouldn't call him lying on the ground in a mansion, literally completely alone.
Yeah.
And just screaming out, I'm finished. I wouldn't call that a big W for capitalism.
Yeah,
I would even argue that this shows kind of the underbelly of like the things that you have to do if you're going to become this 1% kind of thing, and how unsatisfying it is to anybody with
Yeah, and it shows how leading into this era of American capitalism, how rough everything was and how cutthroat and how going back to amorality, how amoral things were. I mean, I don't see it as a win for capitalism either. So it's funny how that's what she latched onto. But I think
she honestly, if you write a review like that, I think you are just looking for you don't like the movie and that's fine, but you just need to be like, okay, what's the thing I didn't like? Oh, well, the capitalist wins. Yeah, I don't like that.
And it's like he won the game, but he kind of lost his soul in the process. Is to me what the movie's saying.
For sure.
And it's just so funny to see that she's still around there hating on stuff. Good old Prairie.
Yeah. Good old Prairie. She still has not replied to our inquiries about interviewing her.
Yeah. I guess she's not ready to talk about.
I did write to her on our website and asked her if she wanted to guest on the podcast when we reviewed Master of Disguise. But what can you do?
Yeah, she's probably like, I don't even remember what that is. And this guy, no, I'm not going to talk to this guy. So
yeah, I should have said my name was, Sarah Tennant.
Yeah, just have Sarah talk to her. We could just do a special interview.
Sarah, if you could reach out to an expose. Prairie Miller talks to Sarah Tennant.
Yeah,
this
sister
week on 60 Minutes
of Scott Tennant.
No, if she found out Sarah had a brother, she probably wouldn't want to talk to her.
That's true. Prairie, we're going so hard on Prairie. No, but
I mean, she shouldn't be forgiven for giving Master of Disguise a positive review.
I'll agree. I will agree. That's a life sentence.
Don't let her off the hook, people.
That is a life sentence. Just another bit of trivia for you. Every Wednesday night during editing, Paul Thomas Anderson and his coworkers would eat a steak and drink straight vodka for dinner, just to be like Daniel Plainview as they edited.
I actually do the same thing for every Wednesday. A handle of the Big V, and then a big old fresh cut or medium rare steak.
Big V and some big meat.
Big V and meat, that's my Wednesday.
It's his Wednesday night, folks.
So, Paul, if you're looking for an intern, give me a call.
How many Paul Thomas Anderson films have you seen?
A few.
A few. Which one do you think is your favorite?
From
what you've seen.
Let me pull up the old listy here.
Yeah.
Punch Drunk Love, I wish I liked a little more than I actually did. It was so close to me really liking it, but it didn't quite get there for me. So my favorite is probably There Will Be Blood, followed by Boogie Nights.
I do like Magnolia a lot too.
I haven't seen all of Magnolia. What I've seen I like, but I haven't seen the whole thing. It's a very long movie.
It is. I know you're a big Tom Cruise fan, and so I would just suggest watching it soon because he's amazing in that movie. It's when I realized Tom Cruise was an actual great actor and not just an actor I kind of liked was in that movie. Yeah. So, and I mean, I like him from other stuff already before that. So I'm just saying I already liked him from Jerry Maguire and all of his more serious roles, but that one he's great in, dude. He plays the role perfectly, and it really fits a Tom Cruise role. But I've
been meaning to finish that, and I've been wanting to watch The Master. I've never seen it.
I haven't seen The Master either, and I want to watch it also. So
so maybe we will.
But yeah, I would say I probably like Magnolia a bit more than Boogie Nights. But Boogie Nights is amazing, and I need to really think. I think I might like this one more than Magnolia now, but I need to really. I'm not sure if I feel comfortable saying that unless I think about it a bit more, but
you're not ready for a hot take yet.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing with Magnolia is it's like 12 amazing actors giving performances of their life. And then this one's like Daniel Day-Lewis, who's already given performances of his life, doing it again. So it's kind of interesting, but I think the story.
Actually, what's funny is the alternate title for There Will Be Blood was called Daniel Day-Lewis Does It Again. Yeah. But they workshopped it, and they went with There Will Be Blood.
If I had a review on Rotten Tomatoes for this, it would be that Daniel Day-Lewis Does It Again. So, no, Paul Thomas Anderson, I love a lot of his work, and I feel bad that I'm behind on some of his movies, but even I know you're not a music video guy, but he's done some music videos that are really cool. And he does some live stuff that's really cool. I think he's working on a live Adam Sandler show right now.
Oh, okay.
For a Netflix special, at least a portion of one, because
I remember reading about that. It's it's a stand-up special.
Yeah, it's a stand-up special, and what's confusing is because Adam Sandler signed a huge deal with Netflix years ago to produce a ton of content. So I don't know if this falls under that purview or whatever.
I think it might. Yeah.
But side note, Adam Sandler also filmed part of his special here in Charlotte. And I don't know if that was part of the Paul Thomas Anderson thing or something else, but one of our coworkers actually was there, so that's kind of funny. He actually got called on by Adam Sandler, so we'll see if he ever shows up in it. But yeah, you know, it's Paul Thomas Anderson. Say what you will about him, I don't think many people have negative stuff to say, but he's just an interesting artist, you know. It's
really just Prairie Miller.
Yeah, and he was kind of doomed from the start with that one.
A negative review from Prairie Miller is a badge of honor. Wear it with pride, Paul.
Yeah, for real. She's our only 1-star review on iTunes, by the way.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. You know what? And this is a good way to close the episode, I think. What if Paul Thomas Anderson actually pronounced his name Paul Thomas Anderson?
God.
You know?
I mean, it would make sense for Paul, I guess, for Paul Thomas.
Paul Thomas, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why people just call him PTA, because they're not 100% sure what he prefers.
I wonder if, and I've always wondered this, did he choose Paul Thomas Anderson because there was also Paul W. I think it's W.S. Anderson. Is that why they both don't do Paul Anderson, or is it just because Paul Anderson's such a plain name?
Paul Anderson is a pretty plain Jane name.
Yeah,
and then Paul Thomas Anderson adds a lot of character. So
it's true. Yeah,
if you sound like more of an auteur with your middle name in there.
There's about at least 20 names when you pull up the Wikipedia article for just Paul Anderson. It's the disambiguation, and there's 20 Paul Andersons listed. So it makes sense for both of them to pick that. But
if his name was John Doe, he'd probably go by John Thomas Doe, right?
Yeah, probably. That's actually a good name.
Maybe his father is a Paul Anderson, so he goes by Paul Thomas.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't blame anyone who doesn't want to be confused with Paul W.S. Anderson anyway, because I
don't even know who Paul W.S. Anderson is.
He did Mortal Kombat and Alien versus Predator, and most probably famous for his Resident Evil movies.
Oh, okay. I would think at this point in his life, Paul Thomas Anderson can make the power move of just starting to go by Paul Anderson.
Yeah, and I think
Paul and make PWSA make him adjust.
I was gonna say at this point, I think Paul W.S. Anderson hopes people confuse him for Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, especially in the negotiating room.
Yeah.
It's wow, Paul Anderson here. It's yep, Paul Anderson. No need to look it up.
Yeah, he wants to do our video game movie.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Max, where can good people find us?
You could find us drinking milkshakes with a really long straw.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can find us at thecriticalbreakdown.com. We're also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. You can find me raising money for my church with shady business practices, or you can find me at Max Rivera Film on Twitter. I think I'm on Instagram at Maxosaurus. I'm on Letterboxd. I'm still trying to remember to use it more. That's just Max Rivera Film on everything else pretty much. So hit me up. We can geek out on this movie. We could talk.
Yeah, you can find me, quail hunting on someone's large tracts of land, or you can find me on Instagram or Twitter at breakdown_Scott, or you can find me on Letterboxd at Stenin2. I'm gonna try and change that. That'll be my project for today.
Do it.
I'm gonna change it. Get it in line with the rest of the brand. Shoot us an email at podcast@thecriticalbreakdown.com. Let us know your thoughts, especially if you're one of the people who chose, or let us know your thoughts if you didn't vote for this movie. If you voted for Raising Arizona or Zero Dark 30. And let us know what you hate about this movie. And we'll package those, we'll print them all out. We'll put them in, we'll send them to Prairie Miller, and I'll just say you're not alone.
Josh Rivera did our artwork.
Jason Brown does our opening music.
And Walter is our podcast oil man.
Yeah, he's our podcast HW. And we're the podcast boys. Next week on The Critical Breakdown,
we're watching Face Off, rated 92% on Rotten Tomatoes.
When are we watching it? Now.
That was spectacular.